Somebody tell me whether we actually appear on Facebook or not.
Yeah, we're live.
Live on Facebook?
Yes.
Streaming?
You're live.
You're live. It's a beautiful thing. Let's press record. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's Wednesday night, 9 p.m. I am Rabbi Efrem Goldberg, joined together with my dear friends and colleagues, Rabbi Philip Moskowitz and Rabbi Josh Broide, and we are here to take you behind
the Bima.
The Bima. Gentlemen, this is episode 18. At what point do you go season 1, episode 1, season 1, episode 18? When do you become season 2? I feel like we've been as manim. We took off 2 weeks. We had Tisha B'Av. We had another conflict last week. We're back. So maybe this is season 2, episode 1, or is this season 1, episode 18? Which way?
I feel like the Noraim breaks it up a little bit. That's when you go from season 1 to season 2. Come back and Cheshvan.
Okay, so we're going all the way. This is still season 1.
Well, in 5 years, we'll be like season 1, episode 420.
Let's thank our sponsors for tonight. Tonight's episode of Beyond the Bima is generously sponsored anonymously. And this is yet another great anonymous sponsor because I know who they are. They don't live in Boca. And nothing makes us happier when people join the BRS movement. We're not a shul. We're not a synagogue. We don't have a synagogue membership. We are a movement. And tonight's sponsors are dear friends of ours who are sponsored in honor of the BRS rabbis and our quest to seek unity and not uniformity, which we could speak about for hours. That is our slogan. That is our motto: unity, not uniformity. Unity demands diversity. You know, Rabbi Steinsaltz just passed away. So I'll tell a story. When Rabbi Steinsaltz spoke in Boca in BRS several years ago, it was in someone's home. And before the event began, he was preparing himself a cup of coffee. First of all, he was such a humble man. There was no entourage, no gabbai, no shamash. He just came humble, sweet, smart. He was making himself a cup of coffee, and I'll never forget. He was stirring his coffee, and he looked at me and he said, "Tell me, Rabbi Goldberg, what's special about your community? What's the hallmark of Boca, of BRS?" Right? A great question. So there's no better question for me. That's like an alley-oop. I launched right into my valuing diversity and celebrating unity, and I launched right into my whole shtick, who we are, what we believe in, the whole thing. I didn't have the PowerPoint on me, maybe before PowerPoint. Anyway, I finish, and he looks up from his coffee, and he says to me, "Of course you have diversity if you had unity. If you don't have diversity, you don't have unity. You have uniformity." I was like, wow, that's why you are brilliant. and I'm me. So in 1 second, he cut right to the chase. And it was a brilliant insight, profoundly brilliant. In order to have unity, you have to have diversity. If you don't have diversity, you don't have unity, you have uniformity. So our sponsors tonight get that. That's who we are, what we're about. We love our community with its tremendous range of diversity. It's one of the things I miss the most in this semi-shutdown that we're still in, the pandemic, is not seeing that range of diversity, connecting, being enriched, and really growing from encountering people, not similar, but who are different than us.
I'll tell you where else I feel it, with people moving into the community this summer. As people move in and I say, "Oh, the community is amazing. I can't wait for you to see the programs, the learning opportunities, the members." And then I realize they're not getting any of that, right? If you're moving in now and you're in a Velia or you're in a new house, you're really limited in what you're seeing and experiencing from the community. And it's sad. I can't wait for them to feel the magic of BRS a little bit.
I think that's part of the challenge is also there's a lot of people that are contacting us, like always, and they want to get in touch with programs. The question is, do you put them in touch right now and give them a taste with a virtual program? Or do you say, you know what? We're not back to where we want to be. Just wait and see. But then they're not getting anything. And it's really tough.
You don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. So, on the one hand, you don't want to describe a reality that who knows when we'll be there again. But I don't think we have to sell ourselves too hard, because if people have moved in and they've moved in during this time, obviously or hopefully they're moving to something. So we just have to continue to try to provide the magic that invites people who don't even live in Boca to join the movement and to be willing to sponsor Behind the Bima. So it's good to be back, boys. We've been off for 2 weeks.
Can I just tell you something? There was an email that went around today. Someone moved into the community. So, you called her, I think. So I figured, let me just call and introduce myself. The feeling that I got when I called was like, it's so strange that a rabbi would call to welcome me. Like, why are you doing this?
Ooh, look who's here. Unbelievable. Rav Judah is connecting to audio. He's connecting. That's sort of Judah. Oh, he's not connecting. I think he was testing. I wanted to make sure he could come back. He's teasing us. But Rav Judah Mischel, the great Rav Judah Mischel, will be back shortly, our special guest tonight, and no better way to come back. So I'll tell you, it was really nice. I got a few messages during this 2-week hiatus. One, Tisha B'Av, obviously we weren't going to broadcast on Tisha B'Av, and the other, we had a conflict, unable to broadcast last week. And I had several messages of people who said, please don't tell me that Behind the Bima is done. Please don't tell me that because the world is starting to begin to think about maybe opening up, that means that Behind the Bima is over. So that was really nice to hear.
No, we're just gearing up for season 2. That's what you got to tell them. Well, I'd like to make a l'chaim to why we had to miss last week. Obviously, the Goldbergs celebrated a beautiful wedding of their daughter, Atara. And it was really, obviously, it was painful for us. I know Rabbi Brody and I were talking from afar, but it was hard not to be there to celebrate with you, to give you a hug in person. So instead, I'd like to make a l'chaim with you to Tara and Kalev, to the newlyweds, to the parents and the entire family, everyone in good health and happiness for many, many years to come.
L'chaim, l'chaim. And the truth is not that I've gone dry, but I am broadcasting from Fayetteville, North Carolina on our way home. So I don't have access to a l'chaim. Amen. Thank you very much. We missed everyone too. And Baruch Hashem was a simcha. And I want to bless everyone that we should all only celebrate simchas in any time and in any way. Hopefully we can be there. But even if we can't, we know that our hearts are with one another. And we should all be blessed to be able to celebrate simchas. All those who are longing and looking to be married, to have children, to celebrate bar mitzvahs, all the simchas in the world. Hashem should shower us with shefa bracha. We should just have simcha after simcha after simcha.
Wow. How are things up north?
Things up north are radically different than down south. I think it's actually complicated. Much is radically different in reality, meaning the data and the facts on the ground and what phase that they're up to is radically different. Some of it's radically different just in behavior, people who are not following the protocols or the way things should be. But in any case, it really brought to me an awareness. Like the first 2 weeks we were up there, we were quarantined. When I say quarantine, I mean lockdown. I didn't daven with a minyan. We were gonna put it out there as to raise money for the shul, for Torah, that you can get a glimpse into a little reality show called 11 People, 14 Days, One House. But Baruch Hashem, we all grew closer and we created memories that will last a lifetime from it. So 14 days, we didn't see anything that was going on outside, nothing. So, and then we started to see what was going on. So in fact, the first day I was out of quarantine, I was out with a mask. With my children trying to pick up food in a plaza that I don't think anyone else was wearing a mask. When someone else with a mask came up to me, it was David Lichtenstein, who was a great Talmud Chacham, great philanthropist, the host of Headlines. And he came up to me, he recognized me. We had spoken before, I'd never met him in person. We had a conversation about masks and how people behave. And meanwhile, I was talking to him and this young yeshiva guy walks up to us. Rav Judah, listen to this story, it's amazing. And then we'll introduce you and welcome you. So this young guy walks up and he says, wow, look at this. And he takes out his phone, he holds it up and he says, look at my podcast player. And he shows that the top 2 podcasts he listens to are Behind the Bima and Headlines.
That's great.
And by the way, I'll tell you, it was in that order. The truth is he had a third podcast he listens to. And yesterday or 2 days ago, I was interviewed on that podcast while I was in New York. I won't say which one it is. When they come out with it, they'll come out with it. And the truth is he had 3 podcasts he listens to. That other one was number 1, Behind the Bima number 2, and Headlines was number 3. So that was really great. Rav Judah Mischel is with us, our special guest tonight. Rav Judah, thank you for coming back. Aleichem Shalom, my holy brother. It is so good to have you. For those who don't know and who doesn't know Rav Judah Mischel these days, thanks to Mishpacha magazine and others who have made him a celebrity in the Jewish world. Rav Judah Mischel is the executive director of Camp HASC, the Hebrew Academy for Special Children. He is a mashpia of NCSY, which we'll ask him to define for us. Founder of Tzama Nafshi, an organization dedicated to fostering Jewish education and inspiration, an educational consultant to the Orthodox Union. So much more. Lives in Ramat Beit Shemesh with his wonderful wife and family, children, beautiful family. And but most of all, I think we've all known Rav Judah for many years. Before that beard was that length, before that beard was that color, any of our beards were that color. We go way back, high school, right, Rav Judah?
Oh, you ran the senior minion.
You knew I was going there.
Yeah, I mean, why wait? Why wait?
You didn't know if it was going to be the first sentence or the last sentence. You knew I was going there.
I mean, I was working in Angle. I was doing my shtadlus, making my appropriate efforts as a 9th grade boy in Frisch from Muncie, and you wanted me to go to Mincha. And now we're here. And now
what was it? You were in 9th grade. I was in 12th. Are we 4 years apart?
I think so.
I think by 12th grade, I had found myself, I had started to actually care about going to Minyan, and that qualified me to be in charge of trying to drag others to Minyan. That was in itself enough. The fact that I made it to Minyan qualified to be in charge of making sure ninth graders make it to Minyan.
There's a difference between like making sure that others go to Minyan and being interested in Minyan ourselves. I mean, that was
Right. Yes, that is for sure. So we go way back, and it's really great to have you on.
Thank
We
you
love
very
you. We
much
love
for
the
having me.
inspiration. So tell us what's going on. You're in America right now.
I'm in America. I'm actually off campus. I've been upstate at Camp HASC for the summer, but down in the city for a simcha, staying at our friend the Gerbers tonight.
Beautiful.
Tomorrow morning. Yeah, Baruch Hashem.
Should always
Camp
come
open?
in for simchas.
Amen.
Camp
Tell
was
us,
open.
yeah. So Rabbi Broide is asking, tell us about camp. What's the story? Camp is on, it's off, it's modified. How's it happening?
Yes, all of the above. All of the above. It's a miracle that we're able to do something. Thank God. You know, on a regular summer, we're providing services for 330 to 350 families, kids with special needs, intellectual disabilities, and we have about 550 staff or so. We're at 15% this year. We're at a 15% capacity. Running a day camp program. That's what's allowed by the Department of Health. So we have families who are upstate New York, who are local. We have some kids who are coming up from Muncie and from the local environs. And just recently, just last week, started also being able to accept some campers or some residents as sleepover guests in our residence facility. It's a challenge. It's a big challenge. It's a summer of the audible, summer of contingency for everybody in the whole world, and
Right.
Camp HASC is no different. But Baruch Hashem, we're able to do something.
So I came to Camp HASC with my family for Shabbos a couple summers ago. I never worked at Camp HASC. My wife did, and my daughter did. And I'll tell you, I think it's a large part of what makes my wife the outstanding mother that she is. I think the people who've worked at Camp HASC, they know chesed at another level. They know selflessness at literally another level than other people. And I get criticized for saying the word literally too much, but I meant literally there, literally another level. So can you talk to us about that? I left that Shabbos, I wrote a whole article about it because I was just so moved. I was blown away. I was so inspired. And I heard the counselors themselves described how transformative it was. Who do you think gets more out of Camp HASC, the campers or the staff members?
That's a great question. I mean, it's the story of all of our lives. Anybody who's a giver, anybody who self-identifies as a helper and who strives to be someone who's part of the solution, so to speak, in any situation, beyond the palindrome of giving, there's the Aron would carry those who sought to carry it. And anyone who's in service of others knows this, that the more we give, the more we receive. And it's a privilege to be in service of others. There's no greater power. There's no greater connectivity that's generated in the world. There's no greater divine presence than that which is, created by two people working together. And, it doesn't take long. It doesn't take long to recognize that this is beyond chesed. It's more, I'd say even beyond arevos. There's something here which is the magical connection between two people who are in service. Someone who's in service, and there's no question. There's no question. You have parents who are benefiting from respite. You have children and young adults who are benefiting from therapeutic service and medical services and lots of love. And as in every situation in our lives, the more we give, the more we grow. So I think it's pretty clear. It's that those of us who are, officially the ones who are the givers are receiving so much more, and that's always the case.
Amazing. Special shout out to BRS member Shana Caskello. I think is the only Boca. We often have a lot of Boca people work at HASC, but I think this summer she's the only one who was able to make it there. So special shout out to her. We're very proud of that. It's really amazing. Do you have a story that stands out of one of the staff members who really changed? And that Shabbos I was there, I remember a staff member telling me that they had always been very impatient in their life. And when you've got a camper and you're trying to get them to the dining room or the next activity, but because of their challenge, their disability, it takes forever to get there. You learn patience really quickly. And he described that from the beginning of the summer to the end of the summer, he was a different person. He had broken a bad midah. He had worked on himself in a way that years and years in a base medrash or elsewhere he couldn't have. So is there a story or someone that stands out to you that you've seen that happen, that magic?
There's so many moments. It's funny. You know how these things are like, we focus on the miracle moments, on the Yam Suf moments, on the Matan Torah moments, on the burning bush and the prophet filling the vessels with oil moments that are revealed and that are obvious. But it's a regular Tuesday afternoon at lunch when a 19-year-old guy sits down to eat lunch hungry and cuts a piece of pizza into small pieces and feeds his camper before he puts it in his own mouth, which is the biggest pella. And I mean, that's the wildest story. It's the moment to moments, taking someone back to the bunk, to the restroom, to clean them, and just living with kavod habrios, so to speak, and polishing, God's diamonds in the world in a natural way, on the way to the pool, changing and then changing out after the pool. Those are like the most awesome moments when things are, clicking and you're just watching it happen. There was, but one of those Yam Suf type moments. There was the first night of camp. Usually, we hide out. I could try not to be seen too much. Thank God we have exceptional staff, exceptional program director, and have counselors and an amazing system of support. And I have the luxury of kind of just like sitting and like watching from afar, hoping like everything, just like stay back and say tikkun klali and hope that everything goes, And there was our director of staff development and clinical research, Dr. Benji Epstein, was out on the lawn, doing his thing, talking to people. And there was a counselor who said, this guy's not going to make it. He's out. Like he wants out already. The Rosh Hashiva pushed him to go. He said, if you want to come back on a bet, you have to work there. And he had the social pressure, to be a part of this. And he showed up and he's just like, I think the exact quote was, I'm not down for this. Like, this is not, it's not happening. And, I think Benji walked him through it a little bit. We have an orientation. I mean, Dr. Shalamas Pollack and Avi Pollack. So they, frame things very beautifully.
Right.
And I think he said, like, you have to just give it a shot. I mean, you're here. You can't leave on the first day. You'll be the biggest loser in town. I mean, you gotta stick this out. Give it a couple days. We can try to make up a story or something, and a great uncle somewhere, I don't know, whatever, you're drafted, conscripted, something. They needed you, I don't know, something. Give it a shot. And he's like, I can't sleep in the bunk. It's too crazy. I don't know what to do with these kids. I have no experience. This is nuts. He was panicking. And that night, literally, this is early in the afternoon. Late that night, walking back to my place, and everybody kind of staff kind of settling in. His camper wouldn't go to sleep. Was having a hard time adjusting first night. Kids get homesick. People with special needs get homesick too. I mean, we all have special needs, and people with intellectual disabilities also miss their parents and also don't want to sleep in the bunk the first night. And this counselor just spent the whole time with him sitting outside on a bench. And when the kids started falling asleep, he laid down on the bench, and the counselor went in and got his blanket and pillow and covered him on the bench right outside the bunk in the lawn in the front, and spent the entire night outside of him under the stars, the first night of camp, totally in service, totally mavatal himself to what was needed. And that was it. That was it. It was Kona Olamo. He bought in, and he just broke that fear. He leaned right into it. And in one night, he was in the army. It was a wild thing. A wild thing. What we're capable of doing when we're put in situations of responsibility and achrayus, when somebody actually expects something of us, and you can't be selfish. You can't be lazy. You have to it's in your hands. It's an amazing thing what people are capable of doing.
It's amazing. Rav Judah, first of all, it's so great to have you on. Thank you. And we also go way back through your brother. And while you were dodging Rabbi Goldberg, I was dodging your brother when he got back from Israel and was trying to get me to learn. I was still in high school. And thank God we've all come a long way. I want to take that last idea. You spoke about how so many people focus on the Kriyas Yam Suf moments, the moments that are big and that capture headlines and that we usually think about as heroic moments in life. But as you spoke about, the beauty of HASC is that that's not how you view success. It's those small things, the everyday, the mundane, trivial acts that a person does on behalf of another person that creates that Kedusha. So I've never been to HASC. I didn't go as a counselor. I've never been yet. But how do you take that magic, that idea, that concept, and drill it down for those who aren't in HASC, for Balabatim, people like me who are just trying to grow and become a better Ben Torah. How do you take that idea of finding Kedusha not in those big moments, but in everyday life, that we can, instead of viewing ourselves as unsuccessful, view ourselves as successful? And you know, if I'm on a website and I don't look at the image, that's heroism. That's amazing. That's successful. And if I take an apple and I make a bracha with kavana, that's also kedusha. So how do you take the magic of HASC, the lessons that you just described, and boil it down for someone who isn't at HASC, who's living a life of just trying to be a better person and grow a little bit in their relationship with Hashem?
It's a great question. Like all of us. I mean, like all of us.
Like all of us.
We talk a lot in camp about how, 1967 was the summer of love. We don't want, 2019, 2020 the summer of chesed. And that you don't really get a badge of honor if you treat an individual with Down syndrome or autism with respect and kindness. You're not an achzar. You're not a monster. You're not cruel. And that the real challenge is not to see them as let's call it a cheftza of mitzvah, not to see them as an object for which we can work on ourselves and refine ourselves like an esrog or a pair of tefillin, but to view a person as a person. And that's really the key, is for us to see ourselves and everyone around us through the lens of kindness and humility, and to have rachmanas on ourselves and others. There's this week's parsha, we say the Ma'or Vashemesh, of Klonimus Kalman Epstein. The Ma'or Vashemesh was a Talmud of the Rebbe of Meir Lechabeli Malachul It says, Re'ei anochi noseim lefneichem hayom. Take a look. Just open your eyes. Like you said, open your eyes at every moment, in every place, in every person, in every experience, in the boardroom and in the bedroom, and in shul and not in shul, and wherever we go and anything that we do. Re'ei, open up your eyes and see that there's a choice, that there's an opportunity, a bracha or a klala. And you could be someone who's a giver, or you could be someone who's a taker, or you could be somebody who's selfish, or someone who's selfless. We have moments where we can choose. There's that space there, that pause, that moment when we encounter, coming out of the supermarket and you see somebody, maybe holding a kid trying to load their car with their packages, where we could just kind of like grab our phone and pretend we didn't see, or, go over and offer a hand, or, walking down the street, you see somebody who looks down, looks kind of sad or forlorn, you haven't seen them in a while. And you could, smile and extend ourselves, take the risk, so to speak, or just continue on our way. Hey, first things first, just take a look. There's an opportunity in everything for positive engagement or for negative engagement. So the Klonimus Kalman says, the Ma'or Vashemesh says, Re'ei, first things first, Re'ei anochi. Just recognize that every single one of us is carrying the power of Anochi Hashem Elokecha, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to speak, manifesting Himself through us. That we ourselves, be Adoni, that Hashem is acting in the world through us, and that we're a chelek elokah mimal, that we are a chip off of a divine block and cut from divine cloth, and that Hashem believes in us and is expecting of us to choose. Meaning, like, to know that we, and to be a counselor in Camp HASC is the most noble and wonderful thing in the world. And I wasn't never a counselor in Camp HASC either. I never thought of it. It wasn't on my list of top 100 things to do during the summer. And until, I dated Ora, I didn't really hear so much about it. A little bit, a couple friends here and there, but, you could be a decent human being and a caring human being and a sensitive human being and a giver and selfless, and you could be in the army of light without ever having worked in Camp HASC or Camp Simcha or Camp Keli or Yachad or Friendship Circle. Like, we don't have to relegate being a giver and a helper to a specific time and place in a specific program. And it's wonderful to have the merch. I mean, the swag is very chashuv. It's a Kiddush Hashem when you see people walking down the street identifying as people who are proud of helping others. But for us, everybody in their own lives, in their own home, we have to be Re'ei Anochi. Know that, hold on, I'm a person. Hashem is counting on me. Hashem believes that I can make a choice here and choose to be someone who's making the world a better place.
Do you think we do a good enough job? And you see people once they're, let's say, around the stage of either going to Israel or coming back from Israel. Do you think before that we do a good enough job in our communities of instilling that notion, drilling it into people, that even in the smallest, most mundane, trivial actions every single day, you can achieve that level of godless that you were talking about, that level of greatness? Do we do a good enough job of that?
I mean, it's the language is changing in the world for sure. People are talking like that much more. The language of the Baal Shem Tov's expansive way of seeing divine engagement of B'chol Derechecha Da'ehu is definitely changing. I mean, hopefully the way that we're framing opportunities for kedusha and opportunities for ruchnius, for spirituality, are becoming a little bit more expansive and inclusive in the world. Avoda Bagashmius, if you want to call it, being involved in the world. It used to be that, like, you think that doing God means going to shul, and doing frum means learning Torah and keeping mitzvahs. But in that way of seeing the world, it's kind of like we've locked away Hashem in certain times and places. We've kind of put God, relegated the religious experience at certain times. Yom Tov, Shabbos, Shachris, Mincha, Maariv. And it's definitely the world is starting to shift more in the direction of talking about Hashem more. You hear people talking about Hashem more. You hear people talking more about opportunities to find meaningful experiences in work and meaningful experiences in relationships. I don't know. It wasn't so long ago. I don't remember hearing people weren't talking about this. Rabbi Weinberger was talking about an Ezra Academy. We had those tapes. But the language of the generation is getting closer and closer to that doctrine. So
let me ask you. Let me follow up from exactly that question. I want to ask you. Again, when you and I were in high school, it's not just whatever level of intensity or inspiration that we had. That language wasn't even available. It wasn't accessible. That entire vocabulary wasn't something that was employed or used. And I think we've both been drawn to it. Me perhaps a little bit more recently, and you a little bit longer, a little bit more expert. But whether it's the length of your beard or the language you talk, I myself have been drawn of late. I'm coming back now, having spent some time in the New York area for the Simcha, and I was by the Ribnitzer Rebbe for davening the night before the wedding, and the Oel of the Rebbe, and I went to the Skver Rebbe while I was there, and that whole, forget just the Rebbes, but the whole language, even if it's not the outer garb, but that inner feeling that we all are looking towards right now. So take us behind the Bima. What in your life, between when we were in high school together and the length of that beard right now, which I'm not fixated or just envious of your beard, but as a symbol of a commitment to a Hasidus, or what we call neo-Hasidus, what happened in your life? What was that change? And what switch flipped? And when it did, how did you know, or how did you decide what to do with it? Where did you go to learn, study? Who were you exposed to? Who did you turn to? Where'd you pick up that vocabulary? And then the second question, which I'm going to throw two things at you, is, even as I heard you describe that Hashem is not only in the base medrash, is not only in the shul, some of the pushback against the neo-Hasidus, of which, whether you signed it up for it or not, but you are one of the faces and spokespeople of it, some of the pushback is, the proponents of neo-Hasidus, we don't see them giving Gemara Shirim or Chaburas and Lamdas or Halacha. So, aren't these other things, isn't Penimius HaTorah and isn't that neo-Hasidus, isn't that dessert? Isn't that icing on the cake? Isn't that something which is the side dish? Isn't the main dish, the classic Torah learning and the classic and so on and so forth? So are there people who have it all? Why does it feel like the community is segmented into those who speak only, Reb Chaim and Reb Shimon's, those who are speaking Baal Shem? But what about people who have shiurim of both up, and they're going viral for offering shiurim on both segments of what we're doing?
Yeah. So I guess there's a couple.
Is our time up? We're good?
We're a commercial.
Want to thank our anonymous sponsor once again. Did we mention Shana Cascalis? I can't pass this on.
I'm not an expert in anything other than I don't know, trying. I'm not I feel like very much still trying to figure this out. And I guess a lot of times when we find our comfort zone in Jewish life and living and philosophy, call it hashkafa, call it, deos, whatever approach, a lot of it has to do with our personality. And we kind of, if we follow our intuition and our heart in a natural way, you often find people who end up in those specific boxes or trapezoids, it's usually the target was painted on the wall, we hit the wall and then you kind of paint the target around it. At least that's what I found with myself. Meaning I have a certain personality, enjoy people and feel connected to very experiential Yiddishkeit. And also, always, I don't know, my father's was a financial analyst and my mother's an English teacher. So, narrative and characters and plot, and for my father, like seeing systems and whatever. That's what I hit first. My parents came in the door to Orthodoxy and observance through Chabad, and even though that wasn't part of like our day-to-day experience, there was definitely that surrounding respect and love for the language of Lubavitch, the language of Avas Yisrael, the language of inclusion, the language of empowerment, of Gaon Yaakov, of Jewish pride.
Music.
Yeah, I love music. I love to party. I love to hang out. I love hanging out with Chevra, and I love music, and I love a good time. And, that kind of like pivoted in the direction, like looking for where that experience is, and found it experientially in the way the Hasidic community sometimes we're expressing Yiddishkeit. On the other hand, I love learning, and in recent years have fallen in love with Torah in a different way than I did even when I was learning for Smicha, even when I did during those years of learning in Yeshiva and YU and Shalvim and whatever. I spent 10 years in Reshit with my brothers-in-law, and the way that they taught Torah and the way that they had an expansive and very holistic way of learning and teaching was inspiring. I grew. That was probably institutionally the most impacted, and saw that you could hold cup, so to speak, in different and have a foot in different places at the same time. Also, being someone who comes from a very open, tolerant, and liberal home, I had the opportunity to kind of like enjoy the smorgasbord and draw from here and draw from there, and never saw it as being something which was contradictory. When it comes to like, the Halachic Man was an important book in my life. Meaning, our first date, my wife was talking about like the most important influences, Halachic Man. I started panicking. I'm like, oh my God, I never read that. I went to the YU library the next day. I took it out and dove right in. And, I was learning Likutei Halachos from Rav Nosson at the time in the morning. That was my Halacha Seder in the morning. Likutei Halachos from Rav Nosson Breslover. But I don't know, I feel like you could also be like a Likutei Halachic Man. You don't have to be one or the other anymore. We can't really afford these days to be one or the other. As to why there are some people who are more naturally in the space of speaking one language and others who are speaking another language, a lot of it is personality. A lot of it is passion. A lot of it is, just, I think it's a positive thing even. I was like, Rav Aryeh Leibowitz is my Gemara Rebbe, and Rav Melamed is my Halacha Rebbe. And I don't know how many zillions of tapes of Weinberger Shirim I listened to in the 90s and early 2000s that like just shaped the collective awareness. And my own Rebbe that I have a Rebbe now, I feel like all these streams are kind of coming together. I don't feel pressure to like find the complete package in one person. Klal Yisrael is the complete package. And in these days, like the world is our base medrash. The whole world is open to us. We can draw from different places and different voices, and have different stages and different things that we include in our spiritual diet. So I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to work through it. And
so maybe it's fair to say that just like in the medical field, you have people who have a general knowledge of medicine, but you have specialists. Right. So in Torah, that you have, and the specialists also have an awareness of and are dedicated to the other areas, but they remain specialists in their particular field, and maybe we have that too.
It's a beautiful way. It's a beautiful way of putting it. It's a beautiful way of putting it.
We're running out of time, and we greatly appreciate you being with us. Rabbi Broide, or shall I say, Rav Josh, do you have a follow-up, Rav Josh?
Yeah, just had a quick question. First of all, tremendous Hakaras Hatov to you and to Camp HASC, our daughter Ayala, at Jake.
Yeah,
Camp HASC.
It's quite a wedding.
Very special place, and also my wife went there. I have to say that because I did not go. I was one. Maybe one day.
There's a special club of guys whose wives went to Camp HASC.
Exactly.
It's us here. Like,
Yeah, for sure. There's no question.
We benefit the most from the whole thing.
Right. Yeah, I'm just wondering, you grew up, you said your family came in through Chabad. What's the real difference, would you say, between Chabad, which is so integrated into many mainstream Jewish communities now, and Neo-Hasidus, which is more modern Orthodox based? Is there
there's an institutional affiliation, meaning like in Chabad, like my parents never connected to Chabad and Lubavitch. It was like the influence of the shluchim in their lives and the empowerment to be involved in Torah mitzvos and the opportunities they were enabled. They never joined the movement. They never put on the clothing and never bought the membership and never joined the shuls. And it was never that. It was just this general language of like mentioned. So I think for those of us who are coming from a more modern background, I mean, it's the perfect storm of openness and of intellectual honesty, hopefully, and intellectual curiosity, and the ability to hold chilukei deos, meaning like we're okay with recognizing that people see the world differently. Like dialectic is something that we're trained with intellectually, hopefully, as we grow up, so that we're able to hold contradiction. We're able to hold different perspectives and respect them and integrate it into our lives. I mean, isn't that the whole narrative of modern Orthodoxy? To be able to, draw from and balance kind of different disciplines and see it all within the context of, Lashem ha'aretz ha'melo, of an Enog Novado, of Ribono Shalom. So it's not, I don't see it as anything which is extraordinary or contradictory. It seems very natural, meaning like being able to appreciate and respect everyone and everything in the world as a reflection of some element of the infinite God is the way we were trained. It's the way it's supposed to be.
Judah,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I wanted to thank you again so much for joining us, sharing your light, your inspiration with us. One last question on your way out. One last question behind the Bima. So I've just been zoch. I just married to celebrate a second wedding, 2 for 2 on the Reshit boys.
Yeah.
So you married the daughter of a rabbi who at the time was the rabbi, I think, of the largest shul, largest in Israel in the country at the time. What advice would you say to a young man who's marrying into a rabbinic family? If you were talking to one of the 2 Reshit boys, my sons-in-law, what would you tell them? What's most important?
Wow. Always have a good vort prepared. That's that was my
Listen to their mother-in-law.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I you would hope that, I mean, I know you, and we've spoken about this, is the challenge of, forget behind the Bima, it's behind the door of the dining room. When you come home, to be able to take off the public persona, which is appropriate and demanded and necessary, and important, and that people are counting on and need, and be able to like change the parts of and kind of, go into dad mode or go into father-in-law mode. So I think for a son-in-law, I'm a proud son-in-law of a rabbi and married to a very proud daughter of who loves and respects her parents and their accomplishments. I think as much as possible to just to be natural, to not buy into the public side of it as much. It's not, I don't know, he's not going to be impressed anyway. As my Rebbe said his son-in-law when he came in, my Rebbe knows kol haTorah kula, meaning like, you got this son-in-law, and the son-in-law was all excited, and the shever and the vart and the ufruf, they talked about this kid's milas, how great he was, how big he was in learning, his avoda, his yira, all the things. Sheva brachas, they talked about how great this guy was. And the night that Sheva brachas ended, I pulled him aside and said, I just want to tell you one thing. I don't expect anything from you. I don't hold of you. I don't need anything from you. Take my daughter and have a happy life. Come here for Shabbos when you want. Don't come to my shul. Come to my shul. Sit next to me. Don't sit next to me. I'm not, make your life and do your thing, so to speak. And no, I'm interested. She belongs to you and you belong to her, and like don't, so I'd say for a son-in-law there is a pressure, there's a pressure. Listen, I didn't just marry the daughter of a rabbi. Like I went to work for my in-laws, meaning like I was teaching for a couple of years, and then we moved to Israel, and I worked for my in-laws and with them, and there's definitely a big shadow. There's definitely a big shadow, and I think that the best advice is just be really, 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 really good to your wife, and really, really, and really take care of that home, and be a mensch, man, and don't make the mistakes I did in the beginning. And listen to your wife. Ezo isha kshera osa ritzon bala. Rabbi Kiva said a kosher woman makes ritzon bala, does ritzon bala. So everybody thinks that means like she follows her husband. Rabbi likes to say that osa ritzon bala means that any of the good things that a man achieves, any accomplishments that a person has, is because his wife wakes up his ritzonos, his desire and yearning. So just be appreciative and be thankful, and clear the table, and don't leave your shoes on the dining room floor, and thank your mother-in-law and offer to pick up the cleaners and all that stuff.
All good advice. All good advice.
Yeah.
So Judah, continue to light the world on fire. Send our love at Camp HASC. Spread the light from there to the whole world. Such a magical, magical place. and keep being you. Thanks for your friendship. Thanks for
having
coming
me.
on
This is
tonight.
great.
Send
This is really
my
good.
love to your parents. I had herring for the first time at the Mischel house, and I've never looked back. So
Look at that. See? Experiential
go.
Judaism.
experience. Your dad definitely gave me an experience. That I know.
Yeah.
Your dad definitely gave me an experience.
No, it was. I'm sure you had no choice in the matter. There was no choice involved in it.
You went to Ashkama, you came home, you had scotch, herring, and nuts, and then you passed out on the couch until lunch. It was great. It was amazing.
Yes.
Sounds like a good experience to me.
Right.
Judah, thank you so much.
Good,
We look forward to
everybody.
having you back on again.
Have a good Shabbos, everybody. Thank you.
Have
Mazel
a great
tov.
Shabbos. Thank you,
Mazel
thank you,
tov.
thank you.
Great.
Actually, the first time his dad ever gave me herring, I never had it in my life. It was the most disgusting thing I'd ever tasted in my life. So I filed it away in the top of my cheek. And then I just, sat there and smiling. And then I excused myself to the bathroom.
Right.
never made it down the pipe, but I made up for it since.
So
I was going to tell
we
him
got a lot
story.
more to talk about, but I'll say this about Judah is that what's amazing about him is he's a real deal, and he's the same person
So
offline,
real.
online, behind the scenes, behind the Bima, in front of the Bima. He's a great guy, and he's the real deal. And there's certain people that when you're around, they bring out something that's good in you, and you feel like they light you on fire. And I always feel more excited, more passionate when we're hanging around with Rav Judah. So
Just a very real person, very intellectually honest, not trying to wow you, right? He's a real person. He had a line there, which I love. I'm going to use it again. He said, "I'm not an expert in anything. I'm an expert in trying." I love that line.
Right.
I'm an expert. We're all doing
good.
that, right? We're all
Right,
experts in trying to be better Ovdei Hashem, better spouses, better parents, better children. I'm an expert
sure.
in trying. Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't, but I really try hard.
Rav Josh, what's your
I
story?
was going to tell him a story. I remember Rabbi Fran told us about the three most impressive shmaz that he ever heard. Maybe it was at a Shachris or at a Marv. One was the Siyam Hashas. I was going to say the other one was at Camp HASC. And I remember him telling us, but then I was like, I think maybe it was Camp Simcha. So I didn't say the story.
It was Camp HASC. I remember
It was Camp HASC, right?
It was Camp HASC. It was Camp HASC. Yeah. Now there's something extraordinary that goes on
Amazing
there, and
place.
you see otherwise really spoiled, entitled young people. And I'm not knocking anyone in particular. It's just a phenomenon of the generation, and it's like a little cocoon, a little window. It's a little space where they escape that trend, and they realize something true about themselves. And I don't know whether there's been any study, longitudinal study or whatever of Camp HASC staff members further on in life, somehow how you can measure the type of parents they are, givers, how involved they are in chesed in the community. And it's a chicken and an egg, right? I don't know, maybe they had that predisposition to chesed before they went to HASC, or maybe they learned it and cultivated it at HASC, but they're definitely something special. And we're all beneficiaries of it because of our wives, children who've worked there, and it's contagious. It's really great. It's really special. So there's a lot more to talk about, very little time left. First of all, it's a sad week to me because in their primaries, Rashida Tlaib, Ilan Omar won. And I davened. I actually, in my davening, asked Hashem, V'lam Ashinim, the people who are just against everything we believe in, everything we're working for, who are trying to extinguish the light. And we're not getting involved in politics, although behind the Bima is not a 501c3, so we can endorse on here. We're not representing Boca Raton Synagogue, but we don't endorse. We're a political show. But this isn't politics. I mean, Ilan Omar is a blatant anti-Semite. We don't have to review her record of anti-Semitism. I'll just say this. When I saw that she won, was it yesterday? When I saw that she won, I just said to myself in 2020, how would an African-American feel? How would Marvell feel seeing a racist reelected in their district? Ilan Omar's record is clear. It's clear. And her opponent, an African-American opponent, Democratic opponent, made very clear her record about Israel because he's actually very loyal to Israel. So there's no innuendo and there's no nuance here. Her record's clear. And yet enough people voted that she's been not reelected, but at least she won the primary, which means she's going to be reelected. So, again, Stephen King was reelected many, many times. Congressman King is reelected many times, even though he's a racist and he shouldn't have been, but he would never get reelected in 2020. So how can an anti-Semite get reelected in 2020? Why is hating the Jew something still acceptable or tolerable that someone you can have a whole team of elected officials who apparently came out today very triumphant and proud that they won their primaries and see that as a further endorsement of who they are on their agenda. That was really sad and depressing to me.
Yeah, and it was also it was a frustration about the pro-Israel community in general. I mean, obviously, we know many of our members that were very involved in raising money for the candidates in those races.
Right.
And, you want to believe the hype sometimes when they say that the Jews run politics and the Jews run, sometimes you want to believe that. And you want to
Doesn't
hope that
work.
if there is someone who's so blatantly anti-Semitic that we'll have enough funds and enough power and enough wherewithal to be able to defeat that person. And when we're not able to do that, so it is a mirror to our faces as a community of what we can do, what we can be doing. Should we have done more to really to combat this stuff and really get off the sidelines and get involved in this stuff?
And where's the failure? Is the failure educating in those districts? Are they not educated about why these things matter? I think a lot of, like you just said, the pro-Israel community poured a lot of money into educate. So do we just, how do we understand it? How do we understand it as religious Jews? Everything that happens is the will of Hashem. So somehow Hashem still wants us to have, maybe there's the elected officials that we deserve. So I think even hashkafically or within our Jewish philosophy, trying to understand why these things happen, it's just, to me, it's kind of depressing. It was really upsetting.
It was hard. It was hard. And we got an email from some of our pro-Israel friends trying to spin it and couch it. But you're right. It was a very frustrating and very disappointing week to watch the news and the primaries and the news coming out.
It was a defeat, and it was defeating. It was deflating. It really was. It was.
Do you think it's going to happen more now that the policy conference isn't happening this year? People are just kind of unplugged a little bit?
It's a good question. I think AIPAC's going to have to find other ways that people can express their pro-Israel advocacy and make that difference. Whatever you think of Joe Biden's vice presidential pick, and of course we're apolitical, we don't comment, but I was happy to see this as someone who J Street has never endorsed and someone who stayed true and loyal to AIPAC, even in the last policy conference this past March when she couldn't appear, but made very clear and posted online that she's AIPAC all the way. So I was happy to see that and somewhat relieved to see that. Again, not commenting on the bigger picture, but only on that particular point. Colleague of ours put out an article this week, which I thought was really interesting and really well said. Rabbi Jonathan Muscat. Jonathan Muscat is a friend and a colleague in Oceanside. He put an article that was titled, "Be a Stakeholder, Not a Customer of Our Shuls and Yeshiva Day Schools." I would just tweak it to say, be a stakeholder, not a consumer. And basically in this article, he succinctly communicates and articulates something that we've been thinking about. Rabbi Moskowitz, you kind of went off on this on Tisha B'Av during Kinos, but there's a lot in a positive sense went off on it. At least I thought
I was delirious. So
you were not.
He doesn't remember.
You were not feeling your best. Yeah, you were unplugged. So, there are a lot of people when they're deciding whether they're going to continue to send their children to Jewish day school right now, which is complicated, very complicated. If it's only going to be online, if it's in person with masks, what will the policies be? Will one get their money's worth? Very complicated. And I am not suggesting or trying to oversimplify it in any way. It's complicated. And others who we know are going to say, well, do I really need to join membership in shul? Do I need to renew my pledge even beyond membership? Can't really attend. I can't get out of it what I'm used to. So his point of the article is that whole mentality is as a consumer, as a customer. So if you're a consumer, if you're like, hey, Comcast, I'm not getting the bandwidth on my Wi-Fi, cut down the price. Hey, whoever else, I'm not getting what I'm paying for, so therefore I'm going to pay less. When you're a consumer or a customer, you're only willing to pay for what you get out of it. And his point was, you're not a customer or consumer. You're a stakeholder. You're a partner. You're a co-owner of the company. You got to put in your own capital, whatever it takes to keep everything going, because it's that important. So I really like that depiction of Rabbi Muscat of, are you a consumer or customer, or are you a stakeholder? And it's exactly how we've been feeling as well.
100%. And I'll tell you a great story. I haven't asked her for permission, so I cannot share her name. But I was talking recently to a colleague of ours at Federation, Rabbi Broide, someone you work with very closely. And I asked her, I said, did you join membership again at your temple? She's not Orthodox. She belongs to a different denomination of Judaism. I said, now that the high holidays are all going to be online, I'm just curious, did you pay your dues? And she said, did I pay? Not only, I was the first one to pay my dues. She goes, every year I hedge and I haw. Is it worth it? Is it not worth it? She goes, I am such a believer in community, in the role that synagogues play in our community, that this year more than ever, she said, I was the first one to sign up simply because I believe in our institutions and the need for them to not only survive, but thrive even in difficult times. And I thought that was such a great tag team off of what you just said about feeling like a stakeholder, not a consumer. Right. A consumer would have said, you know what, I'm not getting the services. What do I need? A stakeholder says, no, I believe in what shul represents in my life. I believe what it contributes to my family, to my faith, to my religious experience. And when synagogues and schools are down and out, that's specifically when I step forward. And if I could do it financially, I do it financially. And if I could do it in volunteer efforts, I do it in volunteer efforts. But we need people more now than ever.
Right.
And
it's a total shift in mentality and thinking. And we have wonderful people. And for the most part, I think people do feel like they're stakeholders. I think they take a bullet for our community. I think they feel a part of a family. I think they dig deep and they give their all. And for the most part, we are profoundly grateful to have such partnership and such stakeholders. Maybe we should come up with a new term instead of being membership. You know, you're a member at Restaurant Depot. You're a member at Costco. I used to say you're a member at Blockbuster. You're a member at all these other places. It's not a membership. It's a stakeholder. It's a partnership. It's like I'm not a member of my family. Like it's the wrong term. It's something part of your very core identity. It's who you are. You can't divorce yourself from it. So yeah, I know that, you know, we need to compete in order our members. We have to provide value and service to them, and we have to make it worth their while on the one hand. On the other, we talked about the BRS movement, what we stand for. We stand for Torah, we stand for Tefillah, we stand for what Rav Judah was describing, lighting the world on fire, repairing the world in God's image, being a conduit and an instrument of chesed, a vehicle to do great things in the world, to connect people, to provide community, to advocate for Israel, outreach, leadership, all the different things. And we don't have to, you know, give our little sales pitch tonight. But if you buy into that, then you're a stakeholder in ensuring or trying to promote that those values can go far and wide. And if you see yourself as a consumer, then you're, well, what's in it for me? I'm going to cut back this year. So we know there are people who are hurting financially. And if you're hurting financially, nobody's asking you or expecting you to do more than you can. You could be a member of BRS, and there are members of BRS for $5 a year. If that's what you can afford, then you can be a member. And this isn't about BRS. And I'll tell you, when I came out of quarantine where we were staying, there was a shul, one of the last shuls in the area we were staying that was still meeting outdoors. And it was 4 minutes from where we were staying, through the woods. Most mornings I had to navigate the deer, and you're not sure, like deer, like it's like a bear. Like, do you really want to like make eye contact, have a staring contest? You want to move the beer? It's I had a lot of interesting experiences with deer this summer. Anyway, so yesterday was the last day I davened there, and I say this not to show off in the least. If anything, I'm showing off about my parents and my grandparents. That I handed them a check. And I said, thank you. I said, thank you, because for the last couple of weeks when I got out of quarantine, I had a place to daven 3 times a day. It was outdoors, spaced, safe, and I'm just grateful. And I don't want to have shown up and taken that tefillah b'tzibor and not contribute. So it wasn't a huge check.
It's crazy you just shared that story. I'll tell you why. Because I was about to jump in with a story that one of my earliest memories was going on vacation. We went to a minyan, and I remember my dad writing a check to the guy by the shul right after Shabbos. Says, Dad, we were here. We davened like 2 minyanim. He goes, yeah. He goes, aren't you appreciative that shul is here and that we have to show Hakaras Hatov? We have to write the donation. But literally,
exactly.
As you were telling that story.
Because that's, you know, we talked about this, I think, in a previous episode about a younger generation who don't join membership till they need an announcement or the member rate, and they don't see that they're a stakeholder. How can I come and take and be a consumer? How can I consume and not contribute? And so, you know, we had parents and grandparents. Yochevet's grandfather, her Opa, Olav Shalom, he was a Levi. Every time he visited, I made sure he got an aliyah because he left a check every single time he got an aliyah, every time he visited. So that, and he deserved the aliyah, of course. He was a very special man, Arnold Goldsmith, our Opa. But there was a mentality of previous generations, and I think it's critical to the future. When we rabbinic leadership and Jewish communal leaders are all talking about what the future holds post-corona, what will be left of community, what have people discovered about their ability to do it on their own. I'll do Kol Nidre and Yizkor on Zoom. I can listen to shiurim from the best speakers anywhere in the world. I got a minyan at the edge of my driveway. I no longer need a shul. So what's our response? What's our answer? And the answer is that community and what it stands for, its values, its ideals, the difference it makes, it transcends. It's so much bigger than each of those privileges of membership. So you're right. If you're a consumer, you can consume those things each separately and build your own menu of consuming those things on your own. But if you're not a consumer, if you're a stakeholder, then you say to yourself, I need the community to be strong. What will a community look like with a shul at its center when this is all over? What will it look like? Who's taking care of the needy? Who's making sure food's delivered to the elderly? Who is right now convening, not just in our community, we're seeing it all over. Who's convening these task force and committees that are saying, what are the Yom Noraim going to look like? How do we make sure we have indoor, outdoor minyanim, shofar blowing, who's going to provide that, convene that, answer those questions, investigate those issues if we don't celebrate? So anyway, I just wanted to raise that and really give him kudos. Rabbi Moskowitz, I thought he did a great job of contrasting the mentality, the attitude of, are you a consumer or customer, or are you a stakeholder? And I think a follow-up to that article would be to spell it out. Kind of, here's a test. How do you think about this, or do you do that? And basically you can tell from the answer to those questions, are you a customer or are you a stakeholder? But you have to convince people it pays to be a stakeholder.
Yeah, I think you gave a Shabbos Shuvah drasha a couple of years ago. I don't remember the exact title, but that was the upshot of it. The upshot is that everyone in the shul needs to have their thing that they're contributing to the community. And for some people, that's going to be financial. For some people, it's going to be that they're shining the silver before the Yom Noraim. For some people, it's they're changing the parochet. For someone, it's going to be he's the gabbai. But everyone's got to have their part that they uniquely contribute to a community, because that's what Hashem demands of us, right? Hashem gives us gifts, and as Rav Judah said, right, the give is the greatest opportunity that we have. And so Hashem gives us gifts, some for talent, some it's resources, but it's what we do with those gifts that really defines us.
Yeah, we once did the back behind Disney scene. It wasn't behind the Bima, it was behind Disney tour. And all the people who work at Disney are called cast members.
Cast members.
Because there's no custodian, there's no janitor, there's no housekeeper, there's no high level, low level, senior, junior. They're all cast members, and they're all part of making it the happiest place on earth. So our members of our community, if you're a consumer, customer, then you're, what have you done for me lately? But if you're a member of the cast, then you're trying to create an environment where it's the happiest and most spiritual place on earth.
Right.
Rav Josh, what's going on in that mind of yours?
I'm just excited right now that we're gonna be launching a whole new program. It's gonna be a very different program this year. I'm very excited that we're gonna be back for the high holidays at Boca Raton Synagogue. We got to work out the schedule, but that's gonna be something very, very.
You're gonna be back at BRS this year. That's big news.
Back at BRS, first time in many, many years. And,
yes.
Can't wait to. It's nice also because there's certain people, people that that enjoy that type of experience, and unfortunately couldn't get it at BRS when we moved off campus. So it's nice to be back for a year.
For sure. For sure.
It'll be nice because part of what I missed when you moved off of the BRS campus, because you got so big, you needed a bigger venue, was the integration. There was something really special about our members coming out of Shul on the Yom Noraim and seeing the outreach members and people being able to interact with each other. Yeah, no, but you know what? There was a pride from our community members. And I think from the outreach side, there was a benefit to seeing a lively, dynamic, vibrant Jewish life taking place on our campus.
I remember 20 years ago when Rabbi Goldberg started the service with the tent.
Back in the day.
The front lawn.
Yeah, in those days we put up tents because we wanted to, not because we had to.
Right.
It's a different world.
Can you copy Rabbi Goldberg's drasha if you're on the campus, or is he just going to call him and give it?
We're going to stop by. We're going to rotate. Well, who knows what drashas? Again, we're convening our committee. We got to figure out. I saw that one of our colleagues, a friend, was quoted in a JTA article about how the Yom Noraim are going to work, and he said my drasha was the first thing to go, and I understand that because it's probably the most negotiable part of davening. It's not part of the davening at all, the drasha. So on the one hand, the drasha could be the first thing to go, but we've also gotten feedback, and this is, again, not to pat ourselves on the back or to flex, but so let's make it about others. I know that when I went to shul when I was younger, the davening did a lot for me, but what I really relied on was an inspirational, motivational talk, was a story, was a drasha, was someone to light me on fire. So on the one hand, from a purely halachic Jewish legal standpoint, the drasha can be the first thing to go. On the other hand, for what people rely on or hopefully lean on to inspire them, the drasha is kind of important for them.
Yeah, we got that feedback from the survey. We put out a survey, and we had a nice participation from our membership. And, what was interesting is we asked people how long would they be comfortable being in shul. And a lot of the comments said, whatever you do, we need two things. One is bathrooms. That was a big one, access to bathrooms. Yes. And number two is they said they rely, it's hard. Yom Noraim are hard. It's hard to get motivated. The words are hard. It's a long davening. And sometimes, as you said, a story, something to touch your heart is what gets you going, and sometimes focuses your mind a little bit.
It's hard to talk to an audience where you can't see their face and you can't see their mouth. Sometimes
true.
You get a good read on the way people are understanding or perceiving what you're saying, and now you're looking at a whole room. You just see eyes, and it's very hard to get a read. It's
a great point. That's a great point. I found myself several times back in Boca that you're looking across a room, and normally you could rely on you're smiling at someone.
Right.
They smile back,
Right, they don't know
with
if
the
you smile.
masks, with masks on, nobody sees a smile.
Right.
It's really wild. It's really something very wild.
It's
So
weird.
we want to thank our sponsors again, our anonymous sponsors who are dear friends. We love you. Thank you for getting the message of unity, not uniformity. And thank you for being part of our movement, even without living in our community. We took 2 weeks off. And when you take 2 weeks off, your podcast dips a bit. So it means we need you more than ever. So take a moment, whatever podcast player you listen to podcasts on, go on Behind the Bima. And as I say every week, don't do it because you're promoting us. Again, we don't make money off of this. Do it because you want everyone to hear Rav Judah's excitement. You want his energy to be contagious and other people to be on fire.
You're a
So go
shareholder.
on. You're a stakeholder in Behind the Bima, not a consumer. So be a stakeholder in Behind the Bima. You get the same cut that we get out of it.
We should sell shares.
We'll get you a Shabbos light if that's what it will take. But be a stakeholder in Behind the Bima. Go on your podcast player, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Go on whatever device you use. Rate, review our podcast. Help it climb the charts, so that not just the young men in Muncie, New York, but everywhere they're listening, everyone can show Behind the Bima's my podcast. We're going to start having some
Bumper
extended
stickers.
features. We're going to have some extra.
Did we just?
We lost him.
We lost him.
Listen,
Take a
while he's
picture.
gone. Oh, okay.
Oh, you froze. You
here.
froze.
I'm here. We've got some. Am I still here? You got me?
Now you're here.
We've got some incredible guests lined up. I will just say that 2 weeks time from now, we have a very prominent guest who is making a very big announcement. That's all I'm going to say. Then in 2 weeks, you do not want to miss Behind the Bima.
I'm a little nervous for that interview. I'm going to start reading up right now.
Where are you going?
We have a prominent guest who will be making a big announcement. So whether it's, I don't know, season 1, episode 18 or season 2, episode 1, but thank you for joining us again. Thank you to Rav Judah Mischel. Thank you to all of you, and wishing everyone, please stay happy, stay healthy, and stay holy. Have a good night.